candidates to please introduce yourselves, your experience with the ICC as both a member and a leader, and also like a short statement about why you're running. Each of you will get 3 minutes to answer this when we start the timer, and we'll start with Reba and then go down to Ramin one at a time. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Awesome. And you are ready.
Hi, my name is Reba. I live at Vail. I used to live at Black Oak. That was when I started my experience in the ICC. Moved in as a general member, eventually became the work manager at Black Oak, which was a really great opportunity to like be more involved in the house. I was also a food steward for a year and social chair for a little bit too. It was a great way to involve events and build community within the house, provide food for my housemates, loved ones. I'm currently the VP for operations. So I spend a lot of time with the board and the coordinating committee, which sets the agenda for the board and serve as advisors for the board. I also run OpsCom or chair OpsCom, and on that we collect KPIs, track quantitative changes in the organization, and we also revise policy, and it's really given me a good understanding for how our organization functions, and that paired with my previous experience as a general member, just being thrust into the VP position and suddenly being deeply involved in central operations, I feel like I have a very good perspective for what the general member knows and also for what is going on in central. And it kind of helps me see what the member view is and how to integrate the member view into our current policies and also how to rework our policies to align with our current values. As a person, is this when we do our like availability and whatnot too? Or is that future?
We'll get to it a little bit, yeah.
Okay. So introduction, like why am I running for president? Is that one of the questions?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Okay, I guess I just keep talking about my experience with the ICC.
Yeah, or just like what makes you feel like you want to do this, what makes you passionate about leadership in the ICC.
Okay, I'm just trying not to repeat questions, but I don't know, I got involved in the ICC originally because I just really, really enjoy being part of the co-ops. This is the first place that I found community. Actually, like being like a queer person and not having any queer friends, like moving into the ICC really gave me a space where I was able to connect with others around me and finally like have a place where I felt like I fit. And I really want to help build that community and strengthen it. And I just see there's so many like passionate people in this organization. And everyone does like a lot to contribute to that. And I very much see myself as a person who wants to empower, facilitate, and contribute toward like the growth and development of our organization. Other things that I've done this year, I went to NASCO in Austin, which was really cool. See a lot of people who went to NASCO here. It was great. It was really cool speaking with other co-ops and just getting ideas of how other people run things, just kind of try to see what we're doing. It's also cool as an organization, many co-ops compare themselves to us, and it's great to see we have a lot to do and grow.
Awesome, thank you. All right, yeah, Julian, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Julian Tehran, or Tehran, or Tehran, doesn't really matter how you want to pronounce it. I'm running for president. I served as the vice president for, originally I was elected as vice president for major maintenance in 2016. Then I we changed the committee name to facilities management, and I served as the VP for facilities management for from 2016 to 2018. Before that, I've been in the ICC since 2014. I'm currently not in the ICC. Well, technically I am with the shares, but yeah. So I'm yeah. I've been actively involved in the ICC. I served on the Major Maintenance Committee back in 2015. Even prior to that, I was a sustainability steward, and from 2014 to 2015. I've lived at Owen House for 5 years. I still try to stay active with the ICC, even though I'm not technically living in a house. I have been very proactive in the size management and restructuring team, which is SMART. It's a team that focuses on expansion. That's kind of one of my big goals in the future. I also served as kitchen manager, house president for Owen House from 2018 to 2019, and I've also served as interim manager. So I've kind of like dove into a lot of different positions, learned a lot of different aspects of the ICC. So I have a lot of institutional knowledge of, I've collaborated with pretty much every committee, every major committee that like serves for Central ICC. I've worked on ad hoc committees for policy changes with Operations Management Committee. I've also served with the recruitment, it's marketing, it used to be called the recruitment committee, the marketing committee and the education committee with the social chair proposals. And I try to be like someone who's like well-versed and well, like knowledgeable about like multiple aspects and multifaceted issues in the ICC. So my goal is to, focus primarily on the finances and the affordability and keeping members accountable for things that that happen in the future. So, my whole platform is, making sure share returns are getting back in a timely fashion and focusing on like a lot of structural things to streamline the ICC. Oh, cool.
That's fine.
Yeah. So Anyways, otherwise, why I joined the ICC? It started as I was in the Michigan research community, and I was like really interested in like just living in community-based housing. It was an easy transition going from like 100-person community to like a 20-person like house. And I was very inspired by like a lot of the community engagement that happened in the early years. But I feel like I want to bring that drive and that passion back to the ICC by like focusing on like big picture stuff that like affect all of us. So I've done a lot of like research, and I want to like continue that drive and finding passionate members to work with so we can accomplish a lot of things in the future.
Great, thank you. Great, then we'll move on to Ramin.
Hi y'all, my name is Ramin. I use he and him pronouns. I live at Vail House. It's my second year living at Vail. Also, I want to say thank you all guys for coming here. Like there's a lot going on in the world right now, and it's a really long hike to come out to the Ed Center. And I just want to acknowledge that I think it's really important to show up for these processes, and so I think it's really great that y'all are here. I came to the ICC in October 2018 because I was working as an RA, and working for housing is not great and wasn't great for me. And I had to quit that job and find somewhere to live on really short notice. And I had a friend that lived at Vail who helped like connect me with a vacancy there and like help me find housing. And so I really like started living at the ICC because it was like, that was like a place that was available to me. And I think there are a lot of people that come into the ICC as like a refuge. And so I think it's really important for that reason. I was a social chair last year in my house, and then I was elected to the board in April. And so I've been on the board. I serve on a diversity committee now. I also got to go to NASCO. And I think in the time that I've been in the ICC, I've come to really sort of see, like the ICC has become very like personally significant to me. And also I think it's very politically significant in the context of Ann Arbor housing. Like to have this alternative option to having a landlord, and like, I think building up that our organization is very, very important from a sort of justice perspective. And for me, moving into the future as I'm graduating, like, and figuring out what is a good place for me to be, I felt like my skills and my passions align really well with the needs that I see in this organization. And that's something that like I weighed really seriously and was talking to people that I really trust about and like figuring that out. And so that's why I decided to run. I think, yeah, I also think similar to what Reba was saying about like NASCO and realizing the place of the ICC, also in a national cooperative movement, I think that we have a lot of responsibility in terms of sort of like almost potential to model things for other co-ops, which we do right now. Yeah, so that's some about me.
Great. Thank you guys so much. Great answers, all of you. Thanks so much for sharing with us. Now we will move on to our next question. You will have a minute each to respond to it. I'll start with Julian, then we'll move to Ramin, and then we'll go on to Reba. So you'll go last. Yeah, okay, great. And so this question is, what do you or did you love most about living in a co-op? And Julian, you can start.
I think this is a no-brainer for me, but I really love the vibrant music culture that I've kind of like tried to, in some ways, kind of force upon my houses, but in a like generous way. But like yeah, so I'm very interested in the social life and like getting people connected. Like also exposing people to like the local music scene, but also just like community, like engaging with like other houses, interacting with houses. That's kind of why I started the South Campus Progressive and the Garytown Progressive, so we can like have more of these interactions with new members. So just like the social aspect is like probably the most important.
Great, thank you so much.
I have really fallen in love with like the miracle of cooperation. I hate to say it, but like, yes. And I think like, I was really excited about this debate because it's an opportunity for the three of us who are all really passionate about the ICC. That's kind of why to all be here in the same room and talk about things. And I think that's like, in the ICC, I've seen it modeled over and over again. How do we make cooperation into something that like produces real results and real like housing and community for people, and isn't just like theoretical and up in the air, like some like sort of political organizing I had done before. And that I loved how that shows up in like food and like cooking at Vail, and like just how cooperation shows up in every single little thing that we do. And it's like, it's kind of miraculous that it all works. And I fall in love with it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Can you start the question?
Yeah. So it is, what do you love most about living in a co-op?
Okay. What I love most about living in the co-op, what first attracted me to the co-ops was definitely affordable housing. And when I moved into the houses, it was very much just falling in love with the culture and the people in my house. I've had the pleasure of living in 2 different houses, just like really allow me to like spread my roots from like South Campus to Carytown, totally different spheres. But like, I definitely agree, like the conversations I've been able to have and to kind of work and have a bunch of young people in a situation where they're taking like power of their living situation and also working together to kind of make that work, from coordinating chore hours to ordering food and coming together in trainings and building up from there. Just seeing how creative everyone is and passionate people are in their involvement. It's really interesting, like going into other spaces and they're like not being the concept of like guff, because like, yeah, guff love.
Cool. Thank you so much. Once again, lovely answers. Me too, guys. Ditto. Same Z's. So this question will start at the end, Reba, then to Julian, and you will have 1.5 minutes each to respond to it. So let me set my timer. And your question is, what have you learned in your ICC positions, and how would that influence your term as president? So yeah, just want to dwell on that for a second, and then we will start when we're ready. Cool.
I think that like I've learned a lot on the board. I think that there are a lot of things that I wasn't aware of before I was on the board. And that's been really cool. And in some ways has also been not super cool. In that I think there's a lot of knowledge that is very restricted to the board, and there's a lot of ways that like, I think that are in general membership, there's like a view that like sort of like the board governs the membership, or that like the central leadership governs the membership instead of central leadership existing to support our organization. And I think amidst that, I have also realized that like there's like a lot of need for moving like our idea of like where knowledge is in the ICC, because there's a lot of institutional knowledge right now. And I think that we need to be looking at, okay, institutional knowledge has its value and is really important. And also like having the knowledge of like what our members dealing with every day, because like general membership are the people who run this organization and own the organization and are living the experience every day. And I think that like I've just learned that I think that there needs to be, I see a big hole there in the way our organization runs.
Every time. Great. Yeah, you like that? We'll keep it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So
Okay.
Susanna.
So before I was elected VP for operations by our board of directors last year, I didn't have, like, as I said before, any knowledge of what was going on in Central. And when I became VP for operations, I realized that the barriers for members to become involved in the organization are so much lower than they appear to be. And something I want to work toward is making it very evident that these barriers are much smaller than they are. I want to push the involvement of members in general to be involved, and yeah, sorry, I was kind of disabled. Sorry, I'm like very much a visual person.
No
like hearing the
worries.
questions spoken is really bad for me.
It's here. What have you?
Oh yeah, and also like working with the coordinating committee, I've been able to see how the agendas for the board is set and how some information is filtered, and I very much want to kind of approach that in a different way. I know the board packs are sent out, and that has like a lot of information in it, and I think like maybe like changing the order could potentially do different things. I think sending out like emails, too many of them, results in people not reading them at all. Very much want to look at our communication systems because it is like limiting in a certain sense. Working on OpsCom, it's been a pleasure to like work with board reps and to kind of facilitate that knowledge. I would like to keep on doing that.
Great, thank you. And then last but not leastly.
Yeah, so I think this is kind of a mantra that you might hear repeated throughout by staff, but we move at the speed of cooperation. And, you know, I also think that cooperation and affordability is something that we have to earn and like work together as a unit. So if we're not all on the same page and there's miscommunication, then we fail as a cooperative. So, you know, I think the general consensus is that we need to, you know, make sure that the board, central, so staff, the board, and us, the general membership, are like, you know, on the same page on things, but we're also just like focusing on like what are our like strategic plan objectives, what is the best approach to meeting those objectives, and how can we succeed as an organization. So, you know, a big issue for me is the affordability aspect, but there doesn't seem to be as much drive and passion to like actually like achieve that. So I want to like work with members and see like, you know, brainstorm like what ideas do they have, and then try to like translate that to general membership. So, you know, I'm very engaged, and I think we need to keep everyone engaged because there's a lot of apathy in the ICC for general membership, and that's a problem. You've seen it with past years where there's just like a lack of voting for general membership stuff. We've also just seen like disengagement in House meetings. It's very tough, but we all need to like, you know, just take a step back and, you know, take feedback, constructive feedback from other members, and then learn how we can come up with solutions to approach those issues.
Thanks so much. Okay, moving on to our next question. Again, you will have a minute and a half each. We'll start with Julian, move to Reba, Reneen, going backwards this time, starting from the middle.
So many orders.
You know, just, you know, we don't want to get stagnant, you know.
Yeah.
Same order. So our question is, how will you balance the duties of the ICC president and of all the other obligations in your lives? So when you are ready, we will start.
So I've been asked this question a lot because I didn't introduce before that, but I'm going to be in grad school for a master's program in School of Environment Sustainability. I plan on taking approximately 12 credits, and I've also when I was VP for Facilities Management, I was taking about 16 to 18 credits given the semester, and I was able to manage the time well while also working as working for the dining hall. I plan on, if I were the president, I would just be working as a full-time position and then doing grad school. Well, it's kind of a part-time because you're only doing around 12 to 16 hours per week. But I think it's definitely manageable because I was doing consistently 12 to 16 hours a week when I was the VP for Facilities Management. So I think it's not going to be that big of an issue.
Great. Thank you. Rita, you ready?
Yeah, so this semester, I'm my last semester at U of M. I'm studying for the MCAT. I'm working as VP for apps, and I'm also an EMT part-time. And I also somehow managed to have somewhat of a social life. Next year, I won't be a student. I'll have graduated, and I'll be part-time working. That'll be 1 or 2 days a week, and I don't have to take that work home with me. I'm done when I'm done. That gives me 5 to 6 days to just focus on the ICC. And I'm really excited to see what I can do when I have like full time to concentrate on just one aspect instead of being pulled many which ways. But even when I'm doing multiple things at once, I'm very high functioning. I'm good at multitasking. I'm good about reaching out to others and trying to use all the resources available to me, because I know that like as president, you wouldn't be functioning as a sole unit. It's very much like working with those around you and putting together that collective effort. I think that answered the question.
Yeah, totally. Thank you. On to you.
Yeah, I'm also graduating, and I have a job right now. I work at a school as like a teacher's assistant. But that ends in like mid-June. I work like 7 hours a week. So other than that, I don't have any obligations. I probably will get like a part-time job, depending on how things look for me next year. But like if I'm elected as president of the ICC, that would be like my main thing. I think also like talking about like balancing boundaries as well is something that I've done a lot of work with for myself, and also have like done a lot of work with in like the organizations that I've worked with in the past. And I think it's important to have good boundaries, have good processes as we all live in the ICC, like to make sure that like our professional drama doesn't turn into personal drama and things like that. So I take serious like figuring out like how do we balance obligations, and I feel good about it.
Great. Thank you guys so much. So we are now. All right, so we are going to move on to our last question before our 10-minute break. During that break, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, we will be drawing for our raffle. If you're watching online and you haven't already entered, there's a link up on the member portal. There are raffle prizes. They're gonna be great. Enter the raffle. Anyways, so last question before the break. Each of you will get 2 minutes, and the question is, starting with me, starting with Reba, and going to me and Julian. Great. The question is, are there trade-offs you think that we should make to make the organization less cooperative, but allow it to run more smoothly or efficiently?
Can you say that again, but slower?
Yes, I can. So are there trade-offs you think that we should make that may make the organization less cooperative, but allow it to run more smoothly or efficiently? Great. So if we're ready. Oh yeah, wait 1 sec. I gotta reset my timer. Reminder, you'll get 2 minutes. Starting. Wait, no, you're starting, then we're going. Right. Okay. Sorry. All right, you're good. Let's do it.
So I think like this question in general says, are there trade-offs you think we should make to make the organization less cooperative but run smoother? I think that like choosing like an option that would make us like less cooperative is definitely like goes against our values. I think that as an organization at the board level, we make all of our decisions collectively. and in the general interest for the organization and for general members. And I'm trying to like picture a situation where we would want to do something less cooperative. I think maybe this is like pointing toward like the idea of 12-month contracts, which was a discussion that was happening at a central level, which I know many people are very strongly against. I'm not for them particularly myself, but this was definitely something that came to the board because it was outlined in the strategic plan, and it was very much just an opportunity to give the board all the information they could have to make a decision about the best interest of the organization and also the best interest of members. And it's very, very important. And I think it was overall like very successful, and as like I'm saying, like just providing information for the board. Are there trade-offs you think we should make to make the org less cooperative? No. I think that our collective decisions are like in nature cooperative if they're keeping up with like the values of our organization.
Thank you. Great. Good.
No, I think that most of our problems come from breakdown in cooperation. That's where our lack of efficiency is. And I think that the idea that cooperation and efficiency are a dichotomy is false. In my experience, at least. That's all I have to say about that. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Amazing. Let's go.
So I would agree with the other candidates. I describe myself as a socialist, but I've I know people. Yeah. So I think generally I've seen like attempts of this happen in the past, but they didn't really pan out well. Generally, like when you have members who, we've had houses that try to succeed from the ICC, which is terrible idea. But so I think instead of trying to like burn down bridges, we should continue to build more relationships and cooperate with not just like members amongst our organization, but also like the broad picture, like city. The city of Ann Arbor, U of M, WCC, EMU, etc. So like I want us to focus on like keeping along with our message and our mission statement, and like making sure our goals align with our vision. I would never do something. I would never try to force something that's like against the ICC core values and the Rochdale principles. Just on the sake of like making a profit or harming like a particular group or identity.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Beautiful answers. We are now going to take a 10-minute break, stretch your legs, have a quick snacky, whatever you wish. Yeah. Hey, we're gonna start right back up. Got a little bit of a toughie, but also you guys can handle it. You guys are very capable, smart, beautiful, fantastic people. So what do we just do? Well, we'll do a new one. Let's go. Ramin, Julian, Reba. Sound good? Awesome. So the question is, house charges are going to be raised for the next year. What would be your plan or strategy to communicate that to the general members? And you will get 2 minutes to answer this question. All right. So, are you?
Yeah.
Cool.
I can do it. Yeah, this is something we talked about at the board like 2 weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
so it's pretty fresh in my mind. I think that like we need to understand that like members' frustration with this is incredibly real, and they have every right to be as frustrated as they are, and we need to not focus on like tamping down that frustration or like telling people that it's misdirected, because I think people are angry for good reason. I think also I think that we just need to be coming to members more instead of asking members to come to Central for like communication-y kind of things. Like I think we should have members of the finance committee that are going to houses and people who are able to to have those in-person relationships and conversations about this throughout the entire year, not just when we have a thing that we don't like. And I think that I also want us to form an affordability working group in the ICC to start having a group that's designated to tackle this issue as their main focus. And there are, of course, there are a lot of things that we need to be doing towards affordability. But I think when membership is at least my experience is when I have talked to other people and I myself, just understanding why charges are going up makes people understand it. People get it. That this we can look for solutions for affordability, and the budgeting process isn't really where we do that. So it's indicative of an overall thing in our organization. It isn't the source of the problem, I guess.
Great, thank you.
It's
Your turn now.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So this is I just want to correct the question. It's ICC charges, not house charges, which are going up. And I think we need to give an easier, comprehensive breakdown of why these charges are going up, and kind of explain to members how we can how can we prevent this from happening again in the future to a significant percentage increase. So my plan would be to focus our time and effort with several committees which would have to be involved, which the alumni team for sure. I think we need to kind of revamp and try to do a better job with alumni outreach, making the website more accessible for them to make donations. Also trying to find philanthropists and people who live in the ICC who can donate a largesse of a huge lump sum of money for that we could designate for scholarships, for house specific scholarships or ICC-wide need-based scholarships. I'm also looking into the affordability aspect of I think we should have a development committee or something similar to that. Maybe using SMART as an example to focus their first things on funding resources. So looking for nonprofits or government grants that donate to, or sorry, that are for nonprofits. So I think we've been missing out. There's Enterprise, which is a not the rental company. It's an actual community that focuses on, or sorry, it's a corporation that we can apply for donations, and no one has been doing this. I really want to focus on getting back into finding grant and funding resources so we can put ourselves in a better position to find answers for the affordability crisis.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so I feel this question is kind of drifted from what is the plan and strategy to communicate this to general members, which I think the short answer is educating board reps so that they can be advocates and bring the information to their house, and move more towards what are we going to do about the charge increases and how are we going to address it and keep them from rising. So I think this has definitely been a big jump in charges. It's been because of several factors, from lower occupancy, which we need to address by improving officer training so that they're present to address harm in the houses, which increases member retention, and then also by improving general affordability. We currently have this avenue through scholarships, so general plans to build our scholarship funds, such as via new processes doing grant writing, are very much on the table for that. Looking at how we allocate scholarships. Something that I've been trying to work on and compile is a voluntary sliding scale, which is definitely a few years out of being a reality, which I'd like to emphasize. But I think it's very much creative solutions that we want to start tracking down. Another idea is making a VP for development position, someone who is reaching out to programs like ICPSR, which can live in houses instead of closing them in the summer, which raises occupancy and addresses our general financial situation. MVP for development could also work with grant writing, and another position I'm interested in helping out with is member assistance coordinator position. And this person allocates member assistance to various areas. Many people don't know what member assistance is. I think this is something we need to address, because we have such like a great knowledge base here in the ICC, and being able to tap into that via member assistance and being able to compensate members for their time, labor, and knowledge via tour hours would be a great way to do that and could help with affordability.
Great, thank you. Julian, you wanted to respond. You have
Oh, yeah.
30 seconds.
Okay, yeah. So just quick about the vacancies. I think that's kind of like the key issue that that we need to fulfill vacancies in the summer and the winter term. So I think one thing that we need to do is work on the website and like streamline it, make sure members can find ways to post like listings for winter term contracts, collaborating with like study abroad programs to get members for like to apply for directly from their website, like the study abroad website on U of M, to the ICC website, and just have it like more streamlined instead of depending on like third party websites for like posting listings and stuff. So I think I want to find a way where we could draft like a document resource so members know how to apply for these to prevent these vacancies from occurring by applying these listings with accurate information about the houses.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for your brilliant insights on this topic. We'll now move on to our next question. We'll start with Reba, go to Ramin, and with Julian. This question you will have 5 minutes each to answer. And that's because your question is kind of something that we've been talking about recently, and in fact Reba touched on, is how do you guys plan to decrease harm before it happens, and then also address it once it has occurred in the houses, whether it be sexual violence, racial discrimination, or income-based discrimination, anything of that sort.
Can you say that again?
Yes, so how do you plan to decrease harm before it happens, and then once it has occurred in the houses? You guys get 5 minutes each. So you can.
What's the order again?
I said Reba, Ramin.
Oh.
Yes. Awesome. So
Okay.
that's good.
Great. So how do we plan to decrease violence before it happens and once it has occurred in the houses? Something I've been seeing this year, which is very much touched on, is banning policies in the ICC, how that happens, and pretty much what I've seen is that it's very important to have these systems in place before the need for it arises. We've recently instated a banning policy at Vail, and this was in reaction to harm that was occurring toward one of our members in our houses. And it was very much like a long, drawn out process because this issue was personal to people in the house when we were trying to develop a supposedly like impartial framework. And it just very much took a lot longer and was a lot more harmful to members in the house than needed to be because we didn't already have the system in place. And I think very much like trying to have informed both like via gender violence and like racial violence and just in general ways to have systems in place before it happens. I very much like the banning policies being in place. I think like also DART. Everyone hears it as DART. I think a very valid point I heard this year was calling it like the dispute and resolution team, or calling it resolution team. Because when it's just called DART, it becomes kind of distanced and separated from what it actually is. Makes it difficult to access it as a resource. And I think very much like trying to increase the knowledge of the systems we have in place is important. And it's also important to improve our current systems, because I've heard a lot from memberships expressing and voicing frustration in banning systems, and also in how expulsions have been taking place, and I think it's something to look at. I want to reach out to other resources, such as ones provided by NASCO, and this is something I think having like a special committee for, made up of member assistants, people who are passionate in the work and who have the knowledge and foundation to construct informed systems for addressing harm and violence, would be very, very important. And having it staffed by people who have the information and tools to do it is like, it's very, very important. From me and my background, I do not think that I personally have the knowledge to write these systems, but I know that in the ICC, I'm not standing alone here. I think my knowledge base is very reflective of many people in membership, and it's very much about reaching out to people who have the knowledge and to empower them to complete these goals, because like I was saying, for occupancy and member retention, addressing harm is a huge, huge part of that. And I think, yeah, this is definitely something to be focused on and that I would want to actively pursue over the course of the next year.
Great, thank you. Great. And on to Ramin.
Yeah, this is a super important issue, and something that I've noticed from my own time as a member, and something that when I was doing house dinners, I was hearing from a lot of people over and over and over again is like problems with the member referral process, I think that our current system is being much more streamlined and much more accessible. I think also people have so many ideas about this. Like everyone who's gone through the process and has had problems with it knows what needs to change about it. And I think that we can, if we can create like a team that is going to go through and go to a bunch, at least start this process by going to a bunch of houses and hearing folks' experiences and what they think should be better. I think that would be really cool. Better training. I think like maintenance, like using our maintenance team as a model for some things is really cool. Like I think if we had like a training system that's similar to maintenance, instead of like having this like info dump at the beginning of the year and then kind of being left in a lurch the rest of the year and expected to remember all this stuff from the beginning or like find it on the website, having that consistent like meeting with other people who are in the same steward position as you and getting training throughout the year would be really cool for like house presidents and other leadership positions where you're asked to be someone who's helping to make accountability processes happen in your house. I think that would be really, really cool. I think also another thing we can take from maintenance is the RFA system. Like what if we had an RFA system that was for non-maintenance issues, that was like for like, I'm having this problem in my house and we had somebody who's working member assistance who was coordinating as a switchboard. Okay, this person is having this problem. Let's connect them with this person. It's another reason also to have committee members coming to the house. If you have somebody from DART who's coming to your house, who's come to your house before, you know like what they look like and you have that. Even if you don't raise something with that person at that time, you know you have a face to match with the name and can maybe feel better about reaching out to them. Banning policies, like Reba said. I think also addressing, jargon was another thing that's I think really important. I think having member assistance, using member assistance is going to be really important going forward, I could see, because it's like an opportunity that we have for people who are not just like board reps and VPs and stuff to be in the committees and can have their voices heard. I think also we should have our people who are doing member assistance, because they're doing really important things. Improving the member assistance role will allow us to have people who are very passionate about that work, that isn't just like, oh, their schedules don't line up for other chores, but like this is a person who gets to be in like these rooms making decisions and figuring out like what do we do when conflict occurs in the ICC. I've also like worked in the past with organizations to create accountability, create an accountability process for an org I've worked with in the past, and it is complicated and messy and really important to do. I think also just making sure we have accountability systems through every part of our leadership. This isn't something that just happens from like in the cases of like individual house members against each other or whatever. Like we also have to have systems for when things happen in our boardroom, or when we have like a house president that isn't making sure that democratic processes happen in their house. So like everyone, be that people on COCO, people on staff, people in house leadership, need to have accountability systems in place, which isn't necessarily the case. And I think that could allow us to have just a whole lot less messy drama in our organization if we do that as well. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, yeah, so I thought both of those are great answers. I would try to like kind of approach this initially in the beginning when members are joining the ICC, maybe like even introducing a new member orientation, more like like slides or resources focusing on like issues like bystander intervention, protecting survivors from, by providing like a safe haven like place that they can be, like if they don't feel safe in their own house, that we can find like, another house to like temporarily like place them while like a trial or something is that's like either through EHOT or DART, having that like in place. And I also think there's a big problem with like the way we deal with like members after they get banned. They seem to always go to Escher. And I think that's a thing that we need to kind of address and like look at the legality of like how do we, what do we do after we ban someone? Not just like, okay, we ban someone and like that's it, but like, what are the steps taken like in the aftermath of that? And there's a lot of like things that we could also be doing. In the past, we had, I don't know if you guys still do this, but we had like SAPEC representatives come to the House in the fall term and give like an hour to hour and a half like bystander intervention training. I thought that was very helpful. Definitely encouraging members or getting resources from NASCO. A lot of this stuff, like, I'm not like an expert on, but I think we should defer to like members of Cooperative Healthy Relationships, DivCom, DART, and also I think we need to do a better job in screening like who we have representing those teams. Sometimes in some cases we have biases where those people are like parties that are involved, and we need to make sure that we don't have these so we can get accused of the ICC being biased against like a survivor or someone who's receiving like physical harm. So yeah, I definitely also agree. I think the RFA system is really interesting. I'd be interested in seeing how we could have someone like do that anonymously in case like for sensitive information, making sure things are confidential. So yeah, I'm all for a lot of these ideas, but like I said, I think it kind of starts at the beginning when members are introduced to the ICC, and a lot of these things happen like during parties. And I think that we also need to kind of readdress like and like train social chairs to learn how to like deal with these issues and kind of like like when they happen, and also keeping like training sober monitors effectively, not just having people like wander around and making like just kind of like seeing if things like happen and like wait till they happen, like actually giving like concrete like bystander intervention training before people agree to do like sober monitor training. So that's something we could change in like how we have like the forms on the website. When they do a sober monitor agreement form, we can make sure that they've like also like reviewed this training or like taken stuff like that to prevent things from occurring, bad things from occurring. Yeah.
Great, thank you guys so much. These are all very thorough and well thought out ideas. And I'm sure that even you'll collaborate in the future on them. You all seem to like each other's thoughts, so that's kind of cool. I would like to remind everyone to please minimize side conversations. There is a debate happening, and if it's distracting me, it's probably distracting them. It's not great. So yeah, if we could just minimize those. If you do need to have a conversation, just step outside. That's great. So yeah, let's move on to our next question. Did you have a question?
No.
Okay, great. Sorry, I thought I saw your hand raised out of the corner of my eye, so I wanted to make sure I didn't ignore you or anything. Awesome. So here's a quick one, but I think it's a nice litmus test, or just it's good to get the opinions out there. So what is more important to you, affordability or improvements to infrastructure, and why? You'll get 1 minute to answer this. Let's start with me and go to Julian and end with Reba. That sounds good. And yeah, like I said, 1 minute each. Let's get started.
Are you starting with me?
Yes.
Right. I think affordability is one of our founding principles, and infrastructure is not. So I think there's definitely a right answer there. I think that infrastructure is very important. Having houses that are in good working order helps us have good affordability. Like if our houses are falling apart, nobody's going to want to live there, and then our charges are going to go like way up. So they help each other out in some cases.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, this one's a hard one for me. As you may know, I was the former VP for facilities management. I'm actually going to say that the structural integrity of the properties is very important to me over affordability. But I want to say in the sense that I think that we live in 100-year-old houses for the most part, and the major maintenance costs are what's driving the affordability or driving the rates. But I think we need to tackle like that some of our properties are literally crumbling, and we need to focus on that because they didn't focus on that for like the past 100 years versus affordability is also very important, but I think we can attack both issues with my ideas in the past about funding and like applying for grants and doing like sensible restorations to our houses over the summer. So I think they're both equally important, but I want to just say that I have a slight bias towards the properties because you can't live in. I mean, there wouldn't be a house if you don't have it.
Cool. Great. Thanks.
Yeah, so we can have affordability without having infrastructure. It's kind of about like fiscal responsibility in this case. If we focus solely on affordability, then it's not looking toward the well-being of the organization, the well-being of future members. If our houses deteriorate because we're not putting money into maintenance, then we won't continue to live as like an organization. But also balancing that with current members and keeping the co-ops a place where people have access to live in. One of my favorite parts of the board meetings are when Jeff comes in and brings like rusty pipes for show and tell. It's fantastic and also startling because our houses very much are in need of maintenance. So yeah, affordability and infrastructure are tied together.
Great, thanks. That was fun. Great thoughts on that. Love that. So we will then move on to our next question. Once again, you have a minute to answer it. Let's start with Julian, Katarine, and Reba. Well, I feel like we've done that. We've done all of it before. I think
Every
we've done
single
all of
order.
it. I don't know, man. I'm not good at math.
You're good.
All right, yeah, let's do that. What I said.
What was it?
Start with Julian, for me, and Reba.
Okay.
Yeah, we're good. We're doing it. I'd just like to say really quickly, I didn't write these questions. These are submitted by members of the House. If you guys are like, why are they asking these questions? It's because you guys wanted to know. So just wanted to do that. I realized I didn't say it at the top, so I'm saying it now. We'll go on to this question, 1 minute each to answer it. The question is, the ICC doesn't have an efficient central way for communication. What changes could you make to improve that?
Okay, yeah. So I think we need to kind of transition. I love the Google Drive, and I love McKinney's work on that. But I think we need to find a way to better translate that onto the website. And instead of like relying on emails, emails are also important. But like we don't need long, and I'm guilty of this. I've written long, like boring emails in the past, but I want to like, make it more accessible for like readers and highlight the important things. Like, if you just send like a member, meeting minutes to like 1,000 people, they're not going to read it. But, we need to kind of like focus and key in on the important things the takeaways that members need. And I think providing like more resources on the website and making it more user-friendly for people of all ages and disabilities, we could do a more effective way of communicating like central ICC. And also like appreciate the newsletters like Patty. So I want to work with Patty to talk about all these things.
Great, thanks. Amazing.
Yeah, I think that working on the website is really important. I think it'd be really cool if we had two different websites. If like we had a website that was like for exterior, like helping people to get contracts and like marketing, recruitment, whatever. And then we had a separate one that was basically just for information, or organizing information for members. I think also like, it would be so good to like, yes, we get too many emails, but also like, I feel like we should be getting, like if we had an actual like ICC wide listserv where we could send emails about like, there will be a board meeting on this date and this is what we will talk about. Like every time we have a board meeting, very short, very succinct, and that's just it. Instead of asking board members to do that, like, which board members like board members can do that. I know that I, at least as a board member, definitely go over my like every weekly allowance of hours, but like that's a better way for me in my head to distribute information more efficiently.
Okay, so like fast action items, I would say like a brief to the point email highlights like the important things that needs to be done. Like long bulky emails, a lot going on, people do not read, a few sentences highlighting, that's a very quick way to get important information across. Long-term items, definitely like the website. There's a lot of clutter on the website right now. We're very much in the process of like refining it and making sure it's easy to find what we're trying to find. I think sourcing knowledge from member assistants also is a good way to have people who like are passionate, like knowledgeable about like website design contributing to that. Important changes, board reps, providing the information to them and really consolidating like during the training that this is how houses communicate with Central, and just making sure that houses have that resource provided to them, the information they need.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, plowing right through. This is our second to last question. It's been a long, beautiful process, but nearly there, and guys have been just such pleasures to have on a panel debate, you know. So this question you will have 3 minutes each to answer. Start with Ramin first last time, right? No, I started with.
I think I started.
You started? Okay. Okay. Let's think this through. Ramin, Reba, Julian. Great. We're doing it. You have 3 minutes to answer. How do you feel about creating a sliding scale charges so our members with monetary privilege can ensure affordability for others who need it? Let's go about implementing this. Yeah. And yeah, you have 3 minutes to answer it, which I know is like a lot to answer in 3 minutes, but you know, just highlights, bullet points, much like the emails we wish to receive.
Yeah, I think that sliding scale is something that we should definitely be looking into, at the very least, as an organization that cares about affordability. When I went to NASCO, me and Reba both got to go to a presentation where another co-op talked about it, and how they had implemented it in their co-op. And there were a lot of really cool things about that and a lot of really cool knowledge, and also some problems that they were running into. I think for the ICC to do it, also I think the co-ops that have done it in NASCO have been like much smaller co-ops than us. And so it would be a different thing for the ICC to go through it. And I think it should be like one of our long-term goals that we're looking at, like sliding scale. I think that scholarships are not an efficient way to like have affordability in an organization. Like it's not, asking someone to go through an application process is obviously going to prioritize people who have more monetary privilege. Also, I think that, so I think it's like kind of something that we would have to do very purposefully, and it would be a long-term goal. Also, I think it's really important for us to do this because like I was saying, like learning at NASCO that we are a co-op that a lot of other co-ops look to. The fact if the ICC, which is such a large co-op, it's been around for a long time, could implement a sliding scale charge system, then that would mean something for the entire cooperative movement in North America, which would be really, really meaningful. And I think also like the way that we just have to also think about how do we think about charges. We're not paying for housing. Like, I mean, in a sense we are, but like the way I think about charges is the co-op needs to provide these resources. It needs money to do so, and people provide a certain amount. And so I think it makes sense for people to provide what they are able to and get what they need out of it. Because we're not landlords, we're like a cooperative organization, and like implement those ideas of like mutual aid into how we do charges would be really cool and would be something hard that we should be exploring.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, sliding scale. Solar Cooperative Housing over in Davis, California currently has this system. They have about 86 members. They have about 40% of their members who say they can pay more. 40%, and then 20% of that, not like 20%, like of the 40%, but like half of the 40% actually do contribute more, which results in about 20% of members be able to pay a little less. It's something they have instated, and like Ramin was saying, like, yes, they're smaller. It would look different with our system, but I think it's very much a possibility and a long-term goal we should be moving toward, because in the co-ops, we very much like have a gap in who lives here. We have people who come here for affordable housing. We have people who come here for the atmosphere and whose parents like pay whatever comes into their bank account. It's very much also why I think it should be a voluntary sliding scale. People choose how much they contribute. How this works with the other co-op is people pledge an amount and they have the decision to continue paying that, and the thing they pledge is basically just so that we can function like organizationally to know how much we can expect people to contribute so that we can offset charges. And it's very much a possibility, but what we need to do first is get our finance department running smoothly before we start adding more burden to it. And like, because that like the sliding scale problem is very much labor and who's going to be doing those resources. That's definitely something I'm looking into and trying to structure. But yeah, so we would start by doing like a survey for membership, kind of trying to see what we have here, because it's not going to be the same as they have in Davis, and we just want to kind of have that foundation. So I would definitely start with a survey to membership to gauge interest and also see where we stand. From there, it would very much be like a process of comparing our systems, looking at how like scholarships work with their sliding scale system and how it works with our system, and then trying to see how it can be like co-opted cooperatively into our system. Yeah, so I'm very much pro sliding scale. I think it has a lot to offer, and I'm very excited about the possibility of that being one of the creative solutions that keeps us as like an affordable housing organization.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting idea. I think we could possibly pilot something like that in like the next 2 or 3 years. It would have to be probably a small house. So I'm thinking like Leicester or Osterwile to like start off with, just like throwing out ideas. But there are a lot of drawbacks. But I first want to like just kind of mention, I visited Boulder, Colorado's co-ops. It's called Masala Co-op. They named co-ops after like spices, and they have like this threshold where you can, if you're over 50, it's like 50K. I'm not exactly sure, but like if your like median family, like median household income is over a certain threshold, you can't live there. So there's only 12 people living there. So they have like a more process for that. But as you know, like the scale of our like ICC being like over 500 members, I'm concerned about like the logistics. So like with our finance office, there's obviously a lot of barriers, like the tax, adding on tax forms and like things to prove that you like how much money you make can be like very difficult. Also just like issues of like honesty and integrity of like the members to report how much they or their parents make. Also just like adjustments to the housing market. What we consider affordable is like, I consider what's affordable is like 20% under whatever the market is. But right now the market's doing really terrible. So like, it's something that's going to fluctuate. And I think it's going to be really hard for our sake, it's such a slow bureaucratic process to adjust to like inflation, turnovers of like membership turnover. Because, if we invest all this time in, a small quantity of members, when we have to like focus on like the charges of like the rest of the ICC, it's going to be really hard to like focus on like the new members for the the upcoming year. So I think it would probably also deter the housing and the finance office. So that's why I think small scale, it'll be good. Maybe pilot it at one of the smaller houses. I'm open to the idea, but I'm a little hesitant. So these are just things that I think there's like outside barriers that could influence like how we could actually approach it, and I think and sometimes it could be like a little impractical based on like our scale. So yeah.
Cool beans. Thank you. You all seem super knowledgeable. Love that. Love well-informed candidates. That's all I really ever wanted. So we are to our last question. You each have 3 minutes to answer it once again. Let's start with Julian, then to Reba, then to me. And the question is, what skills do you have that will make you an effective leader? Describe a situation where you were a leader. And what skills do you hope to improve on if you are elected president? Yeah, let's start that at 3 minutes.
Wait, sorry, could you repeat that question?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, that's a long question.
It's a whole shebang.
Yeah.
Very interviewee.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of a job. So what skills do you have that will make you an effective leader? Describe a situation where you were a leader, and what skills do you hope to improve on if elected?
I think as a leader, I think I've excelled in educating members in the ICC. Usually, like, people have told me that I'm really good at introducing new members to the ICC and explaining a lot of the processes, like in the house level. So my knowledge of like not just my own house, but like a lot of your houses, because I've been in every house multiple times, is sorry, yeah, irrelevant. But like but I think that helps kind of like bridge the gap between like new members who are kind of shy and like don't really know as much, and I'm like willing to engage with them in a like a friendly, approachable way where it's not like daunting on them, giving them too much information, focusing on the more important things, and then slowly introducing other things that are also important to like keeping like the cooperative together. I've done a lot of different leadership positions. I do need to work on just like sometimes I can come off as too harsh or bold, or I don't know. Just like sometimes I'm very passionate about things, so sometimes you might get a very passionate reaction, and and like I'm not afraid to like hold people accountable. So like I'm very pro finding system. So I think like over the past few years we've kind of got a little lax on that. So I think one thing that a good leader needs to do is like hold themselves accountable. I find myself for things, but also hold other people accountable by in like making sure we are kind of like in line with the process. So I don't know. I think overall, I think I'll be a really good leader because I'm very passionate about the organization as a whole. Someone has called me the Energizer Bunny. I like to do a lot of things, and I think that's another issue. Like I wear a lot of hats, but I want to kind of delegate the task to other people and not just focus on like overwhelming myself. And that's something like with burnout I want to address by working on that and like getting constructive feedback from other members, which I'm open to.
Awesome.
Cool. Okay, so I remember starting college and also like writing college essays, and the famous questions like, oh, like how have you been a leader? Like what have you done? and that being like definitely something I hadn't considered myself like very heavily engaged in. Then moving up like through different positions in the co-ops and working with people's schedules via work manager and going through the desires and expectations like as food steward and just always being on demand for that position. And then also like trying to bring people together as social chair, or always I started to really develop my leadership skills through VP for operations. I chair OpsCom. And it's been a very pleasant experience where I get to work with a big wide group of people. Like we have 5 beautiful members, member assistants, and board reps. And it's been really a pleasure to listen to and work with and like solicit feedback from on a variety of different projects as we work toward collective goals and try to base those goals about what we all like hope to accomplish. Really reaching out for member feedback and making sure that the path we're on is one that is collectively like agreed upon. So one example of something that we worked on that I was really proud of is when we went and we looked at summer operations. Something I've heard people talk about a lot is how summer operations are treated the same as fall winter, but they don't function the same because we have much lower occupancy. So as a committee, we went through and we each took apart the section. We collectively compiled a few different officer roles to share with House presidents to kind of condense the workload on houses, and so they can function at lower occupancy or at least have a guide that they can follow in that process. And that was something I was really excited of and proud of my committee for working and putting together. Yeah, and to improving, I think my facilitating skills have always room to improve. Definitely want to seek out trainings and just definitely solicit feedback. I think that like feedback is very huge important. I'm very much pro like reviews and being receptive to when people give me criticisms, hopefully constructive criticisms, but nonetheless, I'm receptive to it. Also, as a side note, I'm personally not pro-fining. I think that it's definitely important to have like the systems in place for when it's needed. But I think in general, cultivating an environment in which people like want to contribute and just like want to put that forward is much more productive than trying to like use a system, which ultimately hurts people of lower socioeconomic classes more. That was it.
Great, thank you so much. Then Ramin.
Yeah, also on fining. Yeah, I think that fines usually just mean it's this thing is fine for rich people to do. And that's what happens though, is people don't do their chores because they can get away with it. So anyway, I think I've been in like leadership positions for my entire life. It's something I drift into over and over again as an oldest child in my house and as like the peacemaker person in my house. It's something I do end up in like in every single situation that I've been in. And it's something I've learned a lot about. I think I've been able to reframe the way I view leadership more towards facilitation, in that looking at like, okay, what needs to have, like being able to listen really well and understand what are the needs right now and who needs to be connected with who in order to make things happen. That's something I've gotten good at. I've been like trained as a facilitator. I have also like other skills I bring. I have experience working in student political organizing, creating like sustainable student-run organizations on campus. I've worked in like electoral politics for Abdul from Michigan, and then worked in city government in Detroit, working with like trying to make bureaucracy more accessible to people. I think that I want to continue to learn, and that's, I think also is like running against 2 other people who have been VPs before. It's something that I was been like, at least internally was like, what does that mean for me to do that? And like, I think that we're an educational organization. And so there's lots of things I want to improve on. And one of them is being here to learn. And I think also the role of the president, like the only 2 positions in central leadership that are directly elected by the membership are the board reps and the president. And I think that gives the president a unique obligation to be a person who is connecting general membership to what's going on in central. And honestly, if the president is like a president is, I see as a liaison between staff, COCO, the board, and general membership. And I think just those first three without membership doesn't do it. And if you're the president, you only know what's going on in the boardroom and what's going on in your individual house. You don't know what's going on in the organization. And so, like, for me, growing into that leadership role would mean having consistent, like, communication with all the houses and making sure that I am, as a way of, like, listening and facilitating what needs to happen in our organization. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Beautiful statements, all of you. And speaking of statements, it's time for closing statements. Yeah, you guys just have any last words you want to say? Any like platforms that you have, like you possess? Any opinions you have that you didn't get to speak on during this bit? If you want to like bring them up, you got 3 minutes. Let's see. Me, Julian, Reba. Sound good? Awesome. So, got anything you want to say?
Yeah, so a few like little platform things that I wrote down that I realized I didn't get to say. I think just that like more things about like addressing harm. I think we need to make sure that houses are having the final say and having consent over like who lives in their houses, that we should always be deferring to making sure that house members feel safe in their homes. And if our systems aren't making that happen, then we need to change the systems, not tell people move out of your house, which is effectively what's occurring. Because if we don't deal with harm, then the people who are harmed leave. And we can't view that separately from our occupancy issues. Like, we need to make sure that our houses are pleasant places to live and safe. And I also think that there are a lot of things around member referral that need to shift, like the practice of moving people between houses instead of actually doing what needs to be done. And I think part of making that happen will be creating exit like paths and like partnerships with local housing organizations so that we can connect people with housing if they get kicked out of the ICC. That way people are not hesitant to bring up issues because they're scared of somebody losing housing. I think also, I don't know, it's really interesting for me to be in this sort of debate format. I think that like, it's really interesting because it's also like, as a cooperative, we're like usually doing things that we're like building together and not competing against each other. So at least going into this, I was like, I don't know how this is gonna work. But I think it's really important that members are here and members are listening to get the information that they need to make the choice about like who we're gonna have moving our organization into the future. And I think we have a lot of important like things that we need to decide. We need to decide like, who are we for as an organization? That's something that Maggie brought up at a board meeting this year, is like, that's a big issue that's facing us, is like, it's coming up with like a lot of discussions, like, are we a student housing co-op? Are we just a housing co-op? And with discussions about affordability, are we willing to actually prioritize people that need our housing more? Yeah, I think also, I encourage everybody to vote. I think this is really, really important because this is a position you elect directly and you have the power to shape what we're going to do as an organization through this election. Yeah, and that's it. And I'm really grateful also to everybody for being here. And I'm very grateful to you, Finn, for being such a great facilitator of this debate. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Reba. That was beautiful. Love that. Great. Moving on a little bit closer. Hello.
Hi. So yeah, there's a lot of things I didn't really touch on. Some of it's in my candidate statement, but I can kind of expound on that. I'm really interested in like creating more member assistance positions. One would be like city engaged, a city council rep, so someone who would go to city council meetings and provide like summaries of what's actually happening, kind of improving our presence in the like Ann Arbor community. Because a lot of like, one of the key issues is like the city council does not care about young people issues. And I think we need to kind of like change that perception by having more of a presence, not just a presence on CSG because we do have a CSG rep. So it'd be something similar to that. I'm also interested in creating a finance accountability officer position where we have someone who's actually like holding the treasurers accountable for turning in their monthly budget statements. That way we don't get into this frenzy of like not having like treasure reports for like the past 4 months, because that's also a problem of why our charges are going up. And like a lot of people aren't really talking about that. I'm also very interested in finding more solutions to summer housing. I liked a lot of the ideas that people talked about. I'm also for consolidating membership by, you know, as a way to have houses operate better as a larger scale, instead of like having 3 people in one house due to a decline in membership. And I think one thing we need to do is kind of pass like policy to like change what's the threshold, like percentage wise, for how many people could be in a house, so we can either effectively shut down that house if we don't think we can make any money from it, or because like we're just wasting utilities and stuff, or like actually having like an Airbnb or summer programs. I've actually spoken with the marketing committee about like just brainstorming a list of like new like organizations on camp, or like summer camp programs that we can work with. I'm also very interested in engaging Escher House members with the rest of the ICC. There seems to be a lot of disconnect between the North Campus Co-op and the rest of the ICC. That's part of the reason why I started Escher Fest back in 2015, to just kind of get people more connected. But I want to do it in a more like in other ways, not just like socially. So like I want to like have more like ICC events on Escher and get members to like get out and like engage with them and see how their system works versus like the smaller houses. I'm also very interested in improving the staff relations and perceptions from general membership. I think as of now, and broadly speaking, there seems to be you know, a disconnect between staff who are, I appreciate they're working very hard. I believe they should be paid more. I think we should find solutions to improving that. But I think we also need to look in a 5-year plan of like having more part-time staff. So like maybe a potential part-time finance, like another finance assistant and another housing assistant. So these are things that I think, you know, it could be beneficial for us as we like work on like larger goals like expansion to increase our staff size, and also just kind of look at like what areas are they struggling in, and what areas like do they need assistance, and how can we do that, and like how can we combine like our expansion plan with how we like improve like our member assistance. So I've talked about in my my statement about looking into apartment housing, where we have members who are focused, similar to like how King House operates, but we have members who are focused on like working on member assistance tasks, as opposed to that you could do from home, not necessarily at the office, but also assisting at the office. So stuff like that. And like I'm looking at our options. And I don't think expansion is something that can happen in a year. I think this is like more of a long-term goal. And I want to kind of like jumpstart that process, so we're not just like jumping the gun, like, oh, like he wants to do expansion in like 1 year. That's not what I'm saying. So yeah, those are just like some of the main things. Obviously, like the how much time am I over time?
You're out of time.
Okay, I'll stop.
Cool. Great.
Cool.
Thank you.
I do want to thank just like really quick Natasha and Patty for doing a great job with the like facilitating and the putting together events, and Natasha for helping with my posters distribution. Yeah.
Thank you to those people. All right. We're on to Reba.
Okay, so in general, reason I'm running for president, I separated it into a few different reasons, both like rational and emotional. Rational reasons being that I believe I understand the policy, I understand like the general view of membership and how to incorporate those views into policy we have, and also revise and edit the policy to be how it should be in line with our values, which are, as Ramin mentioned, ever changing, and it's something we need to constantly be revising and keeping up with so we can support members as members are. And want to increase occupancy by reducing harm through trainings and addressing it and finding ways to actually direct it while it's happening and providing these resources for our members. Also through increasing affordability, which will come scholarships, potentially expanding out into grant writing, and also trying to develop a voluntary sliding scale system for the future. I want to increase an awareness of financially compensated positions in our organization. All the VP positions, MAC position, member assistance coordinator, those are all heard about through word of mouth. And we have such a great breadth of knowledge in this organization. To limit it to only people who have access to people in Central is very much limiting and not something that should be. We need to be directly recruiting members to these positions. And attached to that, increasing and improving the member assistance coordinator position. It's brand new, there's a lot to explore there. Really excited about seeing what we can do, as I said, to better tapping into this great knowledge we have as an organization. This summer we're having our B&B. We've budgeted for $5,000 of profit for that. Very much want to hit or go above that goal. Also very much want to emphasize respect for house autonomy. As we centralize, it has a lot of pros, but also making sure houses can advocate for themselves is extremely important. Also, I want to increase the responsibility houses feel for marketing and filling their spaces. As we become centralized, it can be very much disempowering for houses to accomplish things that we very much want everyone to be putting a hat in the ring for. And so accountability with that, accountability with board reps, improved trainings. And also, there was a comment earlier about treasurers not turning in budget reports. I think that's very much a lack of support. I think that treasurers need increased training and someone to reach out for. I've heard from many treasurers them showing up to office and not having anyone to talk to. So I very much want to focus on that. I want to help get our finance department into shape. We've had 6 different directors for financial services in 15 years. We let that sink in. I've been on the hiring committee this year, and I'm very much dedicated to making that position work. So I just also want to deliberately create space for members who need us the most, and very much this is love, labor, and time to put in this organization that has done so much for me. Thank all of you. Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Amazing. Thank you guys so much for coming by, explaining your platforms. We really appreciate you guys running. You're all wonderful, beautiful, amazing people. So thank you for coming, and thank you for being amazing candidates.